Silence is one of the most underestimated forces in human psychology, yet it holds a power far greater than words ever could. When you step into the world of no contact with a woman, you are stepping into a realm where silence becomes your greatest weapon. Most people think that to influence someone, to keep their attention, or to rebuild attraction, they must constantly be doing something, calling, texting, explaining, convincing. But in reality, it is the absence of communication that often speaks the loudest. Silence does not just remove your voice from her world, it plants an invisible presence in her mind. When you are no longer there to fill her day with words, her thoughts begin to take over, and this is where the true dark psychology of no contact begins. Think about it. When someone is silent, our minds don't simply accept and move on, we question it. We wonder why. We begin to replay past interactions, searching for clues, trying to decode the reason behind the sudden emptiness. That's exactly what happens in a woman's mind when you go no contact. At first, she may feel relief, maybe even a sense of control, because she thinks you are the one withdrawing out of weakness. But with time, as the silence stretches, curiosity begins to creep in. She starts to notice that the attention she once had from you is no longer there, and this absence becomes louder than any message you could have sent. The human brain cannot stand unanswered questions, and when you leave her without your presence, her mind fills in the blanks. Most of the time, those blanks lean toward overthinking, doubt, and insecurity, which work in your favor. Silence does something words cannot. It creates a vacuum. And here's the thing about a vacuum: it always demands to be filled. When you stop speaking, when you stop reaching out, she begins to supply her own interpretations of your silence. She wonders if you've lost interest, if you've moved on, if someone else has captured your attention. Each of these possibilities sparks an emotional reaction inside her, and those emotions can be powerful motivators that drive her back toward you. What once felt secure suddenly feels threatened. What once felt predictable now feels uncertain, and uncertainty is one of the most potent psychological triggers of attraction. When you remain silent, you also shift the dynamic of power. Up until that point, maybe you were the one chasing, trying to fix things, trying to maintain connection. But the moment you embrace no contact, you send a signal that you are no longer playing by her rules. You are no longer available at her convenience. You no longer seek validation through her replies or attention. Without a single word, you communicate that your time, energy, and presence are valuable, and that if she cannot appreciate them, you will not hand them over so easily. This reversal of roles is unsettling to her because suddenly she is not sure where she stands with you. And when a woman is uncertain, when she doesn't feel she has you fully secured, her attraction and focus on you begin to increase. Silence also has the power to magnify memory. When you are present every day, your presence becomes normal, expected, almost invisible. But when you vanish into silence, every memory she has of you grows sharper, more meaningful. The small moments, the laughter, the comfort, even the arguments, they all resurface in her mind with greater intensity. The brain exaggerates what it no longer has, and this is why people often realize the true value of someone only after they've gone quiet. By stepping away, you allow her mind to replay everything without interruption, and those memories become tied to the mystery of your silence. Another layer to this dark psychology is that silence forces reflection not just about you, but about herself. When you stop giving her your attention, she starts to question her own behavior. Was she too dismissive? Did she take you for granted? Did she push too far, assuming you'd always be there? This self-reflection can be uncomfortable for her, but it is necessary if she is ever going to truly value you. If you had kept talking, kept trying to convince her, she wouldn't have had the space to feel this discomfort. Your silence creates that space. It forces her to face the possibility that she might have mishandled something valuable. Of course, silence doesn't work instantly. At first, she might test you with her own silence. She might wait to see if you'll break and reach out. This is where most men fail. They can't handle the discomfort of silence, so they break it prematurely, and in doing so, they hand the power back to her. But if you can endure the quiet, if you can stay disciplined in your no contact, the silence begins to turn in your favor. What once felt like emptiness to her begins to feel like a loss, and what once felt like control to her begins to feel like doubt. It's important to understand that silence is not about punishment. It's not about manipulation in a cruel sense. It's about stepping back and letting the natural psychology of human behavior play out. People chase what moves away. They question what disappears. They crave what they can't fully understand. And silence activates all of these instincts at once. It speaks to the subconscious in ways that words never could. Words can be dismissed, argued with, or ignored. Silence cannot. Silence lingers. Silence echoes. Silence demands attention. When you go no contact and embrace the power of silence, you are not only creating an effect in her mind, you are also creating strength within yourself. Silence forces you to stop reacting emotionally and start standing firmly in self-control. It teaches you patience, restraint, and the ability to let go of chasing validation. This inner transformation is just as important as the effect it has on her, because it shifts your mindset from neediness to abundance. You begin to realize that your silence is not just a strategy to influence her, it is a declaration of your own value, and that is the beauty of it. In silence, you take back what words could never secure. You let her wonder, you let her miss, you let her feel the weight of your absence. And as the silence deepens, so does her realization of who you are and what you mean to her. That is the dark psychology of no contact, power without speaking, influence without chasing, control without force. One of the deepest truths about human psychology is that we only begin to truly value something when we feel the possibility of losing it. As long as something is constant, as long as it is always available, the mind takes it for granted. This is the dark psychology behind no contact. It does not only create distance, it awakens the primal fear of loss inside a woman. When you pull away, when your attention suddenly disappears, you activate one of the most powerful emotional triggers in human nature, scarcity. Scarcity changes everything. Imagine having water available every day. You barely think about it, you don't appreciate every sip. But if suddenly the water stops flowing, every drop becomes precious. The same law applies to relationships and attraction. When you were always calling, always texting, always reaching out, she had no reason to fear losing you. She could assume you'd always be there, always available. That sense of certainty kills urgency, it dulls desire, and it makes your value seem ordinary. But the moment you go no contact, that sense of certainty collapses. She is forced to confront a reality where she might not have you anymore, and that possibility of loss magnifies your value in her eyes. It's not manipulation, it's simply human behavior. We chase what we fear slipping away. We give energy to what we feel might be taken from us. And when you step back into silence, you create that emotional contrast between her previous security and her current uncertainty. Now she doesn't just see you as a man she knows, she begins to see you as a man she could lose. That shift alone can change the entire dynamic of attraction. Loss aversion is a powerful psychological force. Studies in behavioral science show that people fear losing something twice as much as they desire gaining something new. In other words, losing you will feel far more painful to her than gaining another man might feel exciting. When you remove yourself through no contact, you trigger that aversion directly. The idea of someone else taking your place, of you moving on without her, of her missing the chance to keep you, creates a kind of panic that words alone could never create. And the beauty of it is that you're not doing anything extra. You're simply pulling back, holding your silence, and letting her mind do the work. When she begins to sense this loss, her imagination magnifies it. She starts thinking about you being with someone else, giving your attention to another woman, building a life without her. And because she is no longer certain of her place with you, she starts to feel the sting of losing control. That sting often manifests as jealousy, insecurity, or sudden bursts of curiosity about what you're doing. This is why so many women reach out during no contact, even after convincing themselves they wouldn't. It's not because you begged or convinced them. It's because the possibility of losing you became too real for them to ignore. What makes the fear of loss so powerful is that it doesn't stay on the surface. It digs into the subconscious. On the surface, she might still act confident. She might still act as though she doesn't care, but beneath that surface, her mind is wrestling with the possibility that you've moved on. Silence forces her to confront questions like, why hasn't he called? Why hasn't he texted? Is he really done? Has he found someone better? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are exactly the ones that reignite attraction. Every time she wonders if she's losing you, she invests more energy thinking about you. And the more energy she invests in you mentally, the more emotional attachment grows. Another aspect of this dark psychology is that loss reshapes value. A diamond sitting in your pocket every day doesn't feel special after a while, but if it falls out and you can't find it, suddenly its worth skyrockets in your mind. The same thing happens in relationships. When you were too available, she could ignore your value. But when you disappear, when you are no longer at her fingertips, her perception of your value increases dramatically. She starts remembering things she overlooked, appreciating qualities she dismissed, and missing aspects of you she never acknowledged before. Your silence sharpens her vision. What was once blurred by routine now feels rare and irreplaceable. It's also important to understand that the fear of loss forces a woman to confront her own feelings more honestly. When you're always present, she doesn't have to reflect deeply. She knows she can always reach out. She knows you always answer, so she can avoid clarity. But when you're gone, she has no choice but to evaluate what she really feels. Does she miss you? Does she regret taking you for granted? Does she feel a pull to reconnect? These questions become unavoidable when your absence creates a void. And it's within that void that true desire is reborn. Of course, she may resist these feelings at first. Many women try to stay strong during no contact, convincing themselves they don't need you, pretending to be unaffected. But here's where patience works in your favor. Because with each day of silence, the pressure builds. The more time passes without you breaking, the more she begins to feel that she might actually lose you for good. And that thought, whether admitted or not, is often unbearable. That's why women who once acted indifferent suddenly return with emotional intensity, because the thought of permanent loss is far more powerful than any temporary desire for independence. What's fascinating is that the fear of loss doesn't just bring her back, it makes her appreciate you more when she does return. If you break silence too soon, she doesn't get to feel the full weight of what it'd be like without you. But if you hold steady, if you let her truly taste the emptiness of losing your presence, then when she comes back, it's with renewed respect. She knows now that your presence is not guaranteed, that your time and energy cannot be taken lightly. That knowledge alone shifts how she interacts with you. And this is the essence of the dark psychology of no contact. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't try to prove yourself. You let absence speak for you. You let scarcity raise your value. You let the fear of loss work its way into her mind until she can no longer ignore it. This is not cruelty. It is simply allowing reality to show her what it feels like to live without you. And more often than not, that reality is far harder for her to accept than she ever expected. The truth is, people don't miss words, they miss presence. They don't crave explanations, they crave energy. When you step away and remove yourself from her world, you allow her to experience the contrast between having you and not having you. And that contrast is what makes her realize your true importance. That is the dark power triggering the fear of loss through no contact. It is not something you tell her, it is something she feels. Every relationship, every interaction between two people is built on patterns. We often don't even notice them because they happen so naturally. A good morning text every day, a phone call at night, a predictable reaction to her moods. These small, repeated actions form a rhythm. Over time, this rhythm creates comfort, but it also creates expectation. She begins to know exactly how you will respond, exactly when you will reach out, exactly how much of yourself you will give. And while predictability might feel safe, it is also one of the greatest killers of attraction. When something becomes predictable, it becomes ordinary. When it becomes ordinary, it no longer excites. That's why one of the darkest psychological effects of no contact is its ability to break emotional patterns, and in doing so, reignite a woman's curiosity, desire, and even obsession. Think about how the human brain works. We crave novelty, unpredictability, the sense of mystery. These are the things that spark dopamine, the chemical behind excitement and anticipation. If every time she expects a text from you, she gets it, then the dopamine release fades. It's no longer thrilling. It's no longer surprising, it's just routine. That routine dulls the connection, and slowly her attraction begins to fade without either of you even realizing why. No contact breaks this cycle in a way nothing else can. Suddenly, the good morning text doesn't come, the call at night never arrives, the constant availability vanishes. What was once predictable becomes uncertain, and that uncertainty shakes her out of her emotional comfort zone. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's also powerful. When she doesn't know what's happening with you anymore, her mind begins to spin. She starts questioning, why hasn't he reached out? What's different? Did something change? Did he lose interest? These questions create a new emotional pattern, one where she is no longer relaxed in the expectation of your attention, but restless in its absence. And restlessness is fertile ground for attraction, because the same brain that grew bored with predictability now lights up with the thrill of not knowing what's coming next. When you were consistent in your attention, you were training her brain to expect you, almost like background noise she could tune out. By going no contact, you remove that noise, and the silence makes her hyper aware of the void you've left. This is how breaking emotional patterns works. The absence of the familiar shocks the system, and that shock triggers a reevaluation. She begins to look at you differently, to re-examine her feelings, to wonder why she suddenly misses something she once overlooked. Without the break in the pattern, she never would have had to think about it. Another powerful effect of breaking patterns is that it forces her to re-engage emotionally. When someone knows exactly what's going to happen, they disengage because there's no challenge. It's like reading the same book over and over again. You already know the ending. But when you stop following the script she expects, you give her a story with no clear ending. She doesn't know what you're doing, how you feel, or whether you'll come back. This unpredictability demands her emotional attention. She has to invest thought and energy into figuring it out, and that investment deepens her attachment. The more she thinks about you, the more she feels for you, even if she tries to deny it. Breaking patterns also destroys entitlement. When she always knows you'll be there, she begins to feel like your attention is guaranteed. She doesn't have to earn it, she doesn't have to appreciate it, it's just there. But when you withdraw, when you go no contact, that entitlement is ripped away. Suddenly she realizes she doesn't own your attention. She doesn't have unlimited access to your presence. That realization can be jarring, even unsettling, but it is necessary, because when she no longer feels entitled, she begins to feel grateful again. And gratitude is one of the foundations of genuine attraction. There's also something deeply primal about unpredictability in relationships. Our ancestors were drawn to those who were mysterious, who could surprise them, who didn't always reveal everything. Mystery sparks imagination, and imagination fuels desire. No contact puts you back into that space of mystery. You are no longer the man she has fully figured out, the one who responds exactly how she expects. You've broken the mold. You've reminded her that she doesn't have complete control over you, and that lack of control makes you more compelling. This is why so many men who finally stop chasing, stop texting, and stop clinging suddenly find women coming back with greater intensity. It's not because they magically changed overnight. It's because they shattered the emotional pattern that had dulled her attraction. They replaced certainty with doubt, routine with unpredictability, and comfort with curiosity. And in doing so, they reignited feelings that had gone dormant. But breaking patterns doesn't only affect her, it also transforms you. When you step out of the habit of always reaching out, always seeking validation, you break your own pattern of neediness. You learn how to sit with silence, how to detach from constant reassurance, how to let things unfold naturally without forcing them. This inner shift makes you stronger, more composed, and far more attractive. Women feel that change even if they can't put it into words. They sense that you are no longer predictable, no longer needy, no longer operating from weakness. And that energy alone can shift the dynamic in your favor. Of course, breaking patterns requires patience. At first, she may resist. She may try to test you to see if she can pull you back into the old cycle. But the more consistent you are with no contact, the more the old patterns crumble. And when they do, her mind has no choice but to create new ones. Ones where she is chasing, where she is wondering, where she is investing more than she was before. That reversal is the essence of the dark psychology at work here. You are not forcing her to change her feelings. You are letting her own mind rewire itself in response to the unfamiliar. And that is what makes this so powerful. Words cannot break patterns, only action, or in this case, the lack of action can. By doing nothing, by choosing silence, you are doing more than you ever could with constant effort. You are allowing space for mystery, for curiosity, for desire to grow again. You are reminding her that your presence is not something she can predict or control, and that reminder alone is enough to make her see you differently. No contact is not just about distance, it's about disruption. It's about breaking the cycle of predictability that kills attraction. It's about replacing comfort with curiosity, entitlement with appreciation, and routine with excitement. When you break those emotional patterns, you reignite the very thing that drew her to you in the first place, the thrill of not knowing, the spark of unpredictability, the sense that you are someone worth chasing. The final and perhaps most powerful layer of the dark psychology behind no contact is not about her at all. It's about you. Many men see no contact as a tactic to get a woman to chase, to trigger her fear of loss, or to create curiosity, and while those effects are real, the deeper truth is that no contact is a tool for reclaiming self-control and respect. It forces you to stop placing your worth in someone else's hands and instead remind yourself of your own value. When you decide not to reach out, not to beg, not to chase, you are making a statement. You respect yourself enough to walk away from what no longer serves you. That decision alone transforms not just how she sees you, but how you see yourself. When you are constantly in contact, constantly trying to fix things, you are telling her that her approval defines you. Every text you send out of desperation, every call you make out of fear, chips away at your self-respect. You become a man ruled by emotion rather than principle, and she can feel that energy. But the moment you step back and embrace no contact, you reclaim your power. You remind yourself that your peace, your dignity, and your standards come before someone else's attention. That mindset shift is magnetic because respect always starts within. Self-control is rare, and people are drawn to those who have it. Most men cannot handle silence. They cannot handle not knowing what she's doing, who she's talking to, or how she feels. Their emotions drive them to break no contact, to reach out, to relieve their own anxiety. But when you refuse to give in, when you choose patience over desperation, you separate yourself from the crowd. You show that you are not like most men, that you are capable of holding your frame, of prioritizing your growth, of living without her validation. That strength is attractive, not just to her, but to anyone who crosses your path, and there's something even deeper. By staying no contact, you teach her how to treat you. You send the unspoken message that if she disrespects you, if she undervalues you, if she takes you for granted, she will lose access to you. That boundary is essential. Without it, she will continue to assume you'll always be there, no matter how she acts. But with it, she learns that your presence is not a guarantee. It must be earned. It must be appreciated. Respect cannot exist without consequence, and your silence is the consequence that demands her respect. This process also rebuilds your sense of independence. When you stop pouring all your energy into chasing, you begin redirecting it into yourself, into your goals, your passions, your self-improvement. Suddenly, your life is not revolving around whether she calls or texts. It's revolving around your growth as a man And paradoxically, that shift makes you even more desirable. Women are naturally drawn to men who live with purpose, who stand strong in their identity, who don't make a woman the center of their universe. By reclaiming your self control, you naturally step into that role. So while no contact may trigger powerful emotions in her, the real transformation happens in you. It is less about manipulating her psychology and more about mastering your own. When you stop needing, you start attracting. When you stop chasing, you start commanding respect. When you stop begging for her time, you start reminding yourself that your time is valuable. That shift is what makes no contact so effective, not just because it changes how she feels, but because it changes the way you carry yourself forever. And that is the true power of no contact, not just in making her see your worth, but in making you never forget it.